Good evening, YouTube. This is BlakeBarbieDoll, and I would like to welcome you all to my first video for my Her Story series. The topic tonight is going to be regretting motherhood. I'd like to welcome our guest, Miss Vi. So, Miss Vi, please start by telling us a little bit about yourself. You don't have to overshare, but feel free to share as much or as little as you'd like. Tell us how many children you have and how it is that you became a mother.
Well, I'm in the late 50s and I have two adult daughters. Um, One is in her late 30s and the other one is in her early 30s. They are very bright, very tall, pretty. Um, One is successful and one is facing a lot of challenges in life. I became a mother early. I had my first daughter at 20. I was not married. I had my second daughter at 25. Both of them were results of very serious long term relationships, but marriage was not a part of the equation. Not that I was opposed to it, but different circumstances, caused the, it not to work out that way. Um, I always imagined that I would have a traditional life, get married, have the children, have a nice career and a husband that was my best friend who also had a successful career. I had hoped to have a lot of children, like eight, but I was young and did not understand just how difficult parenting can be. And when you're doing it by yourself, it's twice as hard. I love my children. I would kill or die for them. I absolutely would. I cannot imagine life without them. But if I could go back and do it again, whether I was married or still unmarried, I do not think I would have children. It's not because I don't like children, it's because the emotional toll is too great. A lot of times we envision, what we think parenthood would be like, what we want for our children, and sometimes it doesn't work out that way. There are groups that actually support people who don't want children because a lot of people, women and men, are gaslit into having children by pressures from society or their parental expectations for them because people sometimes want grandchildren, but children are emotionally, physically, financially expensive and they take up most of your time. The biggest regret I have with having children is the worrying. You think that you're going to raise this capable person, they'll be independent and they'll be able to take care of themselves. But there are forces in life that are beyond anyone's control that can impact the children. Some people lose their children. Some people's children disappoint them. Some people's children are dangerous. Some people have children who destroy their lives. And this can lead to regret. Some people have wonderful children who are a blessing to the world and to them, yet they still regret being a parent. And for me, that comes with worrying. Is something bad going to happen to my child? Am I going to lose my child? Is someone going to hurt my child? And although these things are not always at the forefront, they're always lurking in the back. So that's the the number one regret I have. I've also spoken with and dealt with some parents who regret having children because the children have mental illness and or the children have developmental issues and it's a burden, or the children have lifestyles that don't align with their moral or faith based beliefs. These things cause heartache. And I don't think people like to really talk about it, about regretting having children, because they feel like that's betraying their kids some kind of way, or saying they wish the kids didn't exist or something, and they feel guilty. But I think it's more common than people are willing to admit, regretting parenthood.
If you don't mind me interjecting, I think you're right. I had a cousin who had children, and she told me, she said, I love my children. I love all three of my children dearly, but I wish I had never had them. And she never went into detail as to why. I believe her when she said that she loved her children. But I often wondered and pondered about what she said, and I would wondered, did she regret having the children because they didn't turn out like she wanted, or because they were cramping her lifestyle? You said when you were younger, you had imagined having children and you wanted a lot of them. Well, you've only had two, but what gave you the change of heart? Was it the way they turned out? Was it the struggle? What would you say is the chief reason that you regret having them? Is it a combination of
It's a
things?
combination of things, but the heaviest thing is worrying about them, constantly worrying about them. One of my children, we don't have the same belief system. We don't have the same moral alignment. So that's a clash and that's painful. My children also sometimes express that they wish they didn't exist. And a lot of people will say, oh, well, especially in the Black community, oh, it must have been something you did or how you raised them or whatever. I will say this: I am not a perfect person, but I gave my children an extreme amount of love. And I did my best to provide for them with the help and support system of um my sister, my mom when she was living, my grandmother. We rallied together. But there were things like, one of my children is very gifted, and they were bullied and experienced a lot of racism and microaggressions from students and teachers. My other daughter suffers from depression, which is genetic. So these are not things that I could control, but they're things that I did try to help and give them support. They are functioning. One is functioning a lot better than the other, but it makes you sad when someone says they don't want to exist, and it's not necessarily from things that came from the home, but things that are coming from outside of the home. There's a lot of macro pressures on women, especially women of color, Black women in particular. So that makes me sad. Worrying about them not being happy and things like that. Them not making me happy or me not making them happy. And this is not to say, oh, I was a horrible mom or they're just horrible children.
Mhm.
Sometimes with different personalities and different circumstances, things just don't align or come into agreement,
Mhm.
So
Well, I thank you for being brave enough to share this, because a lot of people will judge you for saying that you regret having children, and they will immediately interpret that to mean that you don't love your children, which is not true. You can absolutely love and adore your children and wish that you had not entered into motherhood. I can't imagine living constantly in a state of worry. And there are a lot of parents out there who do. They have children who are in the streets, children who are on drugs, children who are battling mental illness, or they're so financially bogged down that they can't sometimes meet the needs of children. You hear about people who have been raised in foster care, and they tell you about their hellish experiences. And I'm sure that those parents, if they had been given the opportunity, would turn back time and not have had those kids, because why would you bring a child into this world just for the children to suffer? The scary part about it is you don't know how they're going to turn out. You
No, you
don't know
don't.
what's in store for them. You don't know
Absolutely.
what they're going to think, what they're going to do. And sometimes you can raise children in the very best of circumstances, and they still don't come out like you expect, or like you hope, or like you're trying to steer them. They are free thinking beings, and their choices may be very, very different from the choices that you would have them make. But I thank you for sharing that you regret having them, but we're making the distinction that doesn't mean that you don't love them,
Absolutely.
because people will judge you, and they will talk about, of course, the scripture. And I love the scripture. I love the word. I believe everything that God says is true. They'll talk about how children are a blessing. And I do believe with the right parent, with the right training, with the right prayers, children are blessings. But you can't say that a Ted Bundy was a blessing.
Right.
You can't say that one of these children that have gone to shoot up a school is a blessing. And I'm not saying that any parent, you know, is subject to have a child like that. There could have been extenuating circumstances or things in their background that caused those children to make those very poor decisions that I'm sure their parents, went to their grave regretting that they had kids like that. But it's like you're not allowed to say that you wish you hadn't had your child,
Right.
without people becoming angry with you. And you certainly can't say it to the child.
No, you
The
can't.
child can say to you, I wish you never had me. But you cannot say to the child, oh, well, I wish I hadn't had you either.
Right. And I think that's what's so difficult, is that you just absolutely cannot be honest, because it would crush the child, or people will come and judge you. Like when someone hears this, the first thing they'll say, "Oh, well, where was the dad?" That's the problem. And but the problems that caused me to regret having children, they're outside of not having a dual parental situation. And when my children express, oh, I wish I had never been born or something like that, it's outside of the paternal dynamics. It's more of like the weight of the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of like the weight of the
Right.
world, or
Mm-hmm.
things that we all just don't agree or align. It could be spiritual, so I think a lot of times people should suspend judgment. They feel like if you don't have this idyllic leave it to beaver life or Huxtable lifestyle, then you're trash and your kids are trash. But I mean, there are some wonderful people that have come from single parent homes that have done great things. Bill Clinton was raised by a single parent. A lot of famous people have had single parents or solo moms. I have an uncle who was, a rock star in his career, and he came from a broken home. But a lot of people don't want to say, I regret having kids. And it doesn't even have to be something as bad as the child being an absolute terror. It could be something as simple as the person just wished they could have reclaimed their time or had the career they wanted, or they didn't want to have to be just burdened down financially, physically, chronologically, and they have what could have been, those types of things. It's okay. It's okay to have regrets. Now, people may say it's not okay to regret a whole human being. It is, if you're still respectful, loving, nurturing, and kind to that human being. They don't need to know that you regret them. You don't treat them like you regret them. They don't understand what's going on. And you can kind of compensate or redeem it by by trying to think of the most positive things, about the situation. But I mean, sometimes we regret having kids.
I think it's the sacrifice. And what it sounds like to me is when you're a mother, and I don't even think this is the same for fathers, but when you're a mother, you have totally sacrificed your happiness, your finances, everything to put that child first. Their needs and wants will always come first. I'm not saying that all fathers um are the same. There are some fathers who will sacrifice everything for their children, but it's just a given that when the mom has the child, that child will be first before her in her life. So basically, you've sacrificed your freedom once you enter motherhood. And you're not just a mother while they're small and while they're growing. You're a mother until you hit the grave or until they hit the grave.
Absolutely. And I think that and the bond is so strong that, if you're not a strong person or have Father God in your life to help you, losing a child can destroy you. And that's a fear a lot of people
Mhm.
live with. They don't want to lose their kids. And then some people have lost their kids. Do they regret having those children so they could have been spared the pain of that loss? Or is it like the old adage, it's better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all? I don't know. But I just think there's a lot to be said about not being a parent, that you don't have to have children to be happy. You don't have to have children to be complete. You don't have to have children to be fulfilled. You can actually exist outside of parenthood and have a beautiful life. And I don't think that people should be gaslit when they say, I don't want children. I think we should respect that. Isn't that person beautiful for being self-aware enough and selfless enough to say, look, I don't have what it takes to be a parent. I don't, this is not what's in my heart. Children know when they're not wanted. Children can sense it. They can sense when you're just trying to tolerate them.
So, what would you say to people who feel that way and they're told, well, you have to be fruitful and multiply?
Um, there's enough people doing that that some people can be exempt from that. There are literally billions of people spitting out more people. Not everybody has to be fruitful and multiply.
Mhm.
I think that quota for that has been more than filled. A lot of times people might say, oh, well, the birth rate is declining. That's okay because there's 8 billion. That's okay. You can have a decline. At a certain point, decline is okay.
And if someone decides that they don't want to be a mother and they find themselves with child, I mean, maybe we're getting into a different topic here. Should they forge ahead and have the baby? I mean, I don't want to have a pro-life discussion, but
I think that decision totally is up to the person and their partner. I think if the partner is available for discussion, they should discuss that.
Mhm.
If the partner is not available or for some reason they can't share that with their partner, I think they have to do soul searching. They have to weigh the pros and cons. They have to tap into their own faith or belief system or moral compass and decide what is best. That is going to be on a case by case basis, you know. And I don't think that people should be denied the ability to choose. Now, do I think that people should use, ending pregnancies
as a
as
form of birth
as a
control,
form of
which
birth
is what it's
control?
being used for, which I think is horrendous. I just don't think that should be used as a birth control. There are just too many.
Maybe an option of last resort,
Mhm.
but I don't think the
Or an
choice should
option of
be
no resort.
taken,
Right.
but I definitely think that people should have a right to choose, but I think they should enter into it with a lot of careful consideration and planning. Um, some people will go ahead, have the child, they will regret it. Some people will not have the child and they will regret it. I mean, and then other times it'll work out the way it should for that person. So, that's a personal, very, very personal choice. And I'm not wagging fingers at anybody for whatever they decide.
You said that being a mother was heavy. Do you think that your experience would have been different had you had their fathers actively and present in their lives every day? Do you think you would have had a different experience as a mother? I mean, if you have someone sharing that burden with you or sharing that blessing with you, maybe you wouldn't feel the same way. Do you think the fathers not being present in their lives every day impacted how you mothered or your experience as a mother?
Well,
I
it
mean, it's
had
hard to do
to.
it. It's hard to do it solo.
It had to impact it because I had to do both roles. So if I have double the work, then I have less time. If I have double the financial burden, I have less resources. If I have double the involvement, then I have less rest. So it had to impact it. But I believe even if I had the traditional leave it to beavers type setup, I still think the regret would be there because of the level of worrying about the children that I have. And I worry all the time. Um, People may say, well, what are your kids doing that you're so worried about? It's not just anything they're doing in particular. But when I hear stories about my children being mistreated at work, even if they're being mistreated at a retailer or something, it makes me very, very angry. I go into mama bear mode. I don't want them unhappy, but life does life. And we have to teach our children how to be resilient. We have to teach them how to not allow things to burden them so much, and I think that's where it is. But you still feel angry when people hurt your child. You want to, punch them in the throat. That's your kid, So I think even if I had had the ideal nuclear family situation, I would still have at least some regret due to worrying about them.
That's understandable. That's understandable. Well, I thank you for sharing your perspective and your experience as a mother and your feelings. I know it's not going to be a popular point of view. Sometimes people hear a different perspective and then they enter into judgment mode, but I thank you for being brave enough to share what you're thinking and what you're feeling. And once again, I want to reiterate, not wanting children doesn't mean that you don't love your children. Is there anything else that you would like to add before we wrap this up?
I would just like to say, I know there's going to be I, a lot of like hate or backlash or, just little snarky comments. I understand the culture. I'm a cultural insider, but I do want to leave room for people who feel this way at night. They lay down and they're thinking about Bobby and Susie or Lakeisha and Laquan, and they just wish they could go back in time and not, have brought children in the world. Take heart, you're not alone, and just try to focus on positive things about your children, even if they're very few. Um, some people, it's a total nightmare being a parent, because some children are total nightmares and some children are wonderful, and the people still regret it. You're a human being and you're allowed to feel non-traditional feelings or feelings that others
Right.
don't find acceptable. So give yourself some grace.
And you're allowed to express them.
Yeah,
You're allowed to
you're
express
allowed
those
to
feelings.
express them as well. And don't let people, if you're young and you want to mate and you don't want children and you're 100% sure, stand on that. Stand on that.
I think
And
it's
that's
important that
okay.
I think it's important that you just said that. If you know that you don't want them or you're not absolutely certain that you want them, don't have them. Because I think one of the worst things that a human being can do to another human being is to bring a child in this world and not properly care for it or want it. I think that's
Absolutely.
absolutely cruel.
It's a form of neglect. It really is. You don't really want this kid. I wanted children. It's just that I have buyer's remorse. That's what it is. And not that there's the buyer's remorse necessarily is completely due to the way the children turned out. It's just the circumstances around parenthood were not all that I understood they would be. And it's a lot. It's just a lot.
Well, I thank you for your time. I thank you all for listening. And until we meet again and talk again, everyone have a wonderful night.